The topic on which I am going to speak today is nonviolence and youth, or say youth for nonviolence. So I'm trying to divide this into three parts. Because I'm speaking from Armenia, I would like to speak about the nonviolent revolution in Armenia and do a small comparison of the same with what is happening in India. Then I would like to briefly speak about war and war industry and the arms lobby and see how do we move from a hate-based, conflict-based, war-based approach to more dialogue and peace-based approach. And the third part will be about direct and non-violent, direct and indirect violence, and how do we address systemic violence. So in this three part, I want to make this presentation. So Armenia, where we are now, is an interesting place because this is where a non-violent revolution took place 2 years back. And the young people played a very, very important role in that. See, after becoming free from USSR, they had changes one after the other. But every time when they made political change, it was through a violent method. And for the first time, 2 years back, they were able to make a non-violent revolution. And they are proud of this development. So if you meet young people in Armenia, they will speak about their non-violent revolution. They will sing about it. They will speak about it. But what is more interesting is that Armenian young people are trying to deepen their understanding of non-violence because they are not happy that they got a change of political leadership through non-violent action, but they would really like to move beyond and see how non-violence can become part of every walk of life. Like we say in India, violence can be manasa vacha karmana. Violence can be through our way of thinking. It can be through our way of speaking. It can also be through our way of acting. This is important to understand what are the roots of violence. And it is also important to understand this present socio-political economic system and from where violence is coming. So it is not good enough to say we have got a non-violent revolution and then we have a change in the political system. It's also important to advance this political system into various other aspects of life. It's almost like saying, like we close our door so that the thief will not come in. Same way, we will create a system where violence cannot come in. So that way, this is very, very important. But what is important for our audience in India? See, India also got freedom through a non-violent movement under the leadership of Mahatma Gandhi. And as you can remember, that Mahatma Gandhi sometimes called off his movement, struggle for freedom because people became violent. And he said, look, I don't want a freedom through violence. Because if you get freedom through violence, you will continue to use violence to keep it. So I want a non-violent change because then you use non-violence to violence to keep it. And after India got freedom through non-violent method, many other countries got freedom. Mahatma Gandhi's personality influenced many people like Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King. And now when you go to every country, we find there is a small Gandhi there. There is an Armenian Gandhi, there is a French Gandhi, there is a Canadian Gandhi. So you can see Gandhi in every part of the world. And what does that mean? It only means people who are trying to advance nonviolence. There are leadership who are trying to advance nonviolence, and they are called Gandhi. So Gandhi is very popular because of the very method that he used for getting uh, freedom. Now, this is not enough. We also need to remember we have a history of nonviolence. We have Mahavir in India, who is the guru of Jain religion. We have Buddha, the guru of Buddhist religion. We have Mahatma Gandhi, of course, but we also have Vinoba Bhave, who organized a large Bhudan movement for redistribution of land. So we have many examples of non-violence in India. Uh, we are proud of this. We feel that India achieved its freedom through non-violence. But what is important is not only to be proud of it, but how do you convert this pride into action? So uh, after 70 years, when you look at India, we feel sorry that we were not able to go beyond this freedom struggle. After India became free, we were not really able to create a non-violent society. After the COVID-19 arrival, and when the shutdown was declared, we saw millions of people coming from different parts of the country, walking long distances, the misery, the poverty, the helplessness. And this is a wake-up call for us to see that we have somehow failed in taking this non-violent revolution, non-violent freedom struggle beyond freedom struggle to creating a system based on non-violence. So how do we understand this depth of violence and non-violence, and how a non-violent society can be created is a challenge that, like the Armenian young people have taken that challenge, and they don't want to sit down quietly and say, look, we got this new government, we are happy. They continuously work in terms of research, in terms of advocacy to get their point through. The Indian young people have this responsibility not to sit quiet, though we have lost valuable 70 years, but then even now it is not too late for us to start working in this direction. The second point that I want to bring to today's discussion is that after the arrival of coronavirus, the first thing that the United Nations Secretary General did was to give a call for a total ceasefire. Mr. Guterres gave a call to the world saying that immediate ceasefire. Why? Because people are really suffering in areas where there is conflict. And in areas where there is conflict, no medical aid can reach, no food can reach. So there is greater possibility of people dying there because of coronavirus. So this was a call from the Secretary General of United Nations. But then, what is there to understand? That look, imagine how much money is going into conflict and war, and how much is going into peace building. So there is a huge mismatch. So much money is spent on war, and very little is being spent on non-violence or creating a non-violent uh, order. So it is not important that we can continuously complain about violence, we cry about violence. What is important is that we stand up and say that we need to bring an end to war and violence, and we need to create a, a world where there's peace and justice. Now, war is a business. This is something which we need to understand. I'm sure that many of us understand that war is a business. And arms lobby is the largest lobby, biggest lobby in the world. They need war if they want to grow their economy. And they need to sell old equipments if they need to produce new and modern equipments. And they sell to both sides. So continuous war, perpetuating war is how they make money, and they have vested interest in this. And it is not only ending with war between countries. These war lobbies or the arms lobbies are also reaching into our homes. See, if you look around, you understand most of the toys are violent toys. We buy those toys for our children, and we are happy when our children play with those toys. Most films are made with a lot of violence in it. The villain will have gun, but the hero will also have gun. You sometimes find heroes and villains with two guns in two hands. And media is also bringing a lot of violence and violent news. And slowly we learn this language. We learn this language of violence, and they create excitement in our mind about violence. And they make us believe that violence is the instrument of the powerful. And people who speak about non-violence are weak or even coward. So this is how they work very systematically into our mindset and creating this excitement. So they invest not only in making arms, they also invest into toys making, they invest into film making, they invest into everything so that people will start believing in violence. Friends, this is time to wake up. Peace will not come through violence, peace will not come through the barrel of gun. So if you go through a path of violence, we only get violence. So, like Gandhi said, an eye for an eye will make the entire world blind. So, peace will come through a process of discussion and dialogue. So, how do we help our young people to learn how to discuss, how to dialogue? See, there are so many conflict around us. We have various kinds of conflict. We have conflict in the family, we have conflict in the society, we have conflict related to resources. So, how do we help young people to understand conflict, reach out to areas where there is conflict, and use this method of dialogue and discussion to resolve many of these issues? So, it is not important to complain about the violence and problems, but can our young people learn these techniques to talk and reach out to people and help them in resolving these problems? And we should also create a mechanism to reward people who contribute in terms of resolving conflicts. At the moment, those who create conflicts are becoming leaders, and soon people who resolve conflict should become leaders. That was the second point I wanted to bring to you. How do we help a dialogue process in a world where there is so much of conflict and war and a lobby behind it? And the third point that I wanted to bring today to your notice is about direct and indirect violence. See, one can see direct violence, but often we can't see indirect violence. Poverty, exploitation, corruption, injustice, these are all forms of indirect violence. And indirect violence can sometimes breed direct violence. Because out of frustration, people feel, look, why suffer so much injustice and problems? Why can't I take violence into my hand and attack people? And this is often the result of unacceptable level of indirect violence that we perpetuate on poor people. So this is time for us to think, how do we deal with indirect violence so that we don't allow indirect violence to result into direct violence? So direct violence is anyway bad, but then indirect violence is equally bad. But very often people ask, how do we do that? How to begin, where to begin, etc. So I want to state some possibilities. Like educational institutions can play a very, very important role. Educational institutions can frame their children, their students, to understand the society. Now, what is happening in educational institutions? People come in for a degree because that degree will give them a job because that will give them some money, and money that they can enjoy life and abuse life. So this idea of education only for a job to education for knowledge, and knowledge to serve the society, and knowledge to make a society a better place. Unless we reframe the agenda of education totally, we will be creating thousands and thousands of people through many colleges and schools, but everybody will be looking for a job, and none will be concerned about the level of violence that is happening around them, and they will not have the skills and capacity to deal with it. Even the climate crisis, about which we were very concerned recently, is the result of how we behave, how we approach nature, how we consume and waste. This climate crisis was not the result of the behavior of ordinary people and poor people. This was basically people who had power and capacities to buy and consume and waste. And they approached all the natural resources in a way that this is all for me. So remember Gandhi. Gandhi said there is enough for everyone's need and not enough for anybody's greed. So this greed-based approach to life need to change, and that is where educational institutions need to come in. They can also look at the economic model, because today's economic model is very violent. This is a very violent economy, and exploitative in its character, and creating poverty. So the recent study shows that 58% of global wealth is in the hands of 1% of people. So this economy is creating big disparity in the society, and this disparity will ultimately lead to violence. So economy is not only to make money, economy is also to understand how we create a non-violent economic system so that everybody can have a decent life. Look at the social system today. We have a lot of conflict around us. We have conflict of caste. We have conflict of indigenous people because they don't have access to forest. You have conflict of women because they are looking for equal space in the society. You have conflict related to alcohol and domestic violence. So can our young people understand these social problems and address that? This is something which they need to be taught, they need to be trained. Look at the political system, right? These are all educated young people who are getting into politics. This has become a place for money, power, and muscle power. People who have money, power, and muscle power can capture political power, and they run the country, they can run the world the way they want. And also look at the governance system. The governance system is not to answer problems of the people. The governance system is basically to enjoy life in the positions that we occupy, and hide behind police and force rather than going out into the society, addressing the problems of farmers and poor people and indigenous people. We are all hiding behind the police force without answering the questions of people. Same with media, and media is also perpetuating violence and promoting hate through social media and other media, also spreading fake news. Now, if we have a dream for creating a peaceful, harmonious society, non-violent society, we need to reorganize our society. We need to reorganize our economic system, the social system, the governance system. All that need to be reorganized, and that is what we need to understand. It is not just getting freedom through non-violent method, but how do you then advance the non-violent method into creating a non-violent society? So reorganizing the society using non-violence as a method is very, very important. I believe if this will become possible only if young people learn what is violence and what is non-violence, and how can we create a non-violent society. And this is not for anybody else. Young people need to understand this is a world that we are creating for ourselves. We want to live in a peaceful, harmonious society, and so we need to create it. I'm sure that none of these young people want to really live in a society where there is war, conflict, and violence. So this is almost like cleaning my own house. Why do I clean my house? Because I want to live in a healthy environment. So if I want to make my society a non-violent society, because this is the kind of society in which I want to live, this is a kind of society in which I want my children to live. So creating a new world for the future. So I want to thank all our listeners today. Uh, so I was focusing more on Armenia and India because I thought Armenian young people are going ahead with the lessons they have learned. And through our global peace march, we are taking this message not only to Armenia and the countries that we visited already, we are taking this message to different part of the world. So let us work together to make a peaceful and harmonious or non-violent society. And for that, let us gain the kind of skills and capacities and try to address this issue of a world without violence, without conflict, without war, so that a peaceful world can be created through our efforts. Thank you very much.